Hello, and welcome to VOW, Voices of Wisdom, the show that might not be for everybody, but everybody needs to watch this show. And I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. I have back again today with me special guest Lee Hayes, Tuskegee Airmen. They're the group that wasn't assigned, but they were requested. Welcome, Lee Hayes.
Thank you.
Okay, the last time we were here, we talked about up until the point where you were graduating. So after you graduated, tell us from there what happened after you graduated.
After I graduated from bombardier training,
Right.
What they did, the whole class finished. So there were 20 of us that finished, and we were shipped to Kentucky, Godman Field, Kentucky. That's where they were forming the bomber group, which was called Force 477th, I think. 477 bomber group. Anyway, while we were there, when you fly, you get what they call flight pay, and you have to fly to so many hours a month to get your flight pay. And since I was sending my check to my parents for their support, you know, and it made up for with that check. Anyway,
Do you mind me asking, do you remember about how much was it?
well, it's about half of what you pay. We got about $300 some dollars for flying, and about half of it went to your. I forget what they call that now. It's a check that an allotment to.
Okay, and then you actually assign that allotment to send it home or to send to your wife or family, whatever.
To my family,
Got you. Okay.
Okay, and but to get the flight pay, you know, you don't get your full $300 if you don't make flight pay. You only get half of the time. You know, you had to fly so many hours a week. You know, and flight you had, and you had a rating that you could fly. If you were a bombardier, you got it, and if you're a pilot, you know, those qualified people get this flight pay. So when we were there, while we were in Kentucky, we used to hitchhike, or what do you mean they call hitchhike? If you run and try to grab a plane and get on it and get some time. And basically, you had to do something when you got on the plane. So my first job, I only flew once because I didn't stay there long enough to fly any more time. But I flew as a navigator, because a bombardier is a navigator. They're double rated. You know, they call bombardier navigators. So I flew as a navigator, and I had to direct this plane, and the pilot, he came back and gave me a good report. He says, at least he got us back there and back. But anyway, but from them, what they did while we were there, the orders came from Washington, so they told me, that took the half of that class, of which I was in a class of 20 that were there, and they took 10 of us and selected us to go to pilot training. And I was one of the 10 of that class.
Okay.
The other 10, they said, went to celestial navigation, which is an advanced navigation.
Okay.
And I was lucky I went to pilot training, but I went back. So, and going to pilot training, that means I go back to Tuskegee again. So I came back to Tuskegee for pilot training. And then I went through my regular phases of pilot training. It's so many little incidents happened then, but I think I'll just dwell on the big one. You know, you go through your preliminary and your advance and all that stuff, and there was a time, I remember one time I was doing my regular flying and practicing and everything, and then you're solo. You know, you got to solo first, and then I solo. But it seemed like all this came easy for me, because everything I did, I was one of the first. You know, usually they give it 10 hours of solo. I could do it in 8. You know what I mean? And then whatever special programs looked like, it took me less time. But anyway. anyway, I remember one time when I was training, I had done all my exercises and stunts and rolls and spins and stuff. And then I pulled out to relax, and something just said to me, it said, looking back of you. So I just turned my head and looked in the back of me, and I looked in the bombardier's face of a B-29, which was one of the biggest airplanes we had then. And the plane was so close on me, I looked in the bombardier's eyes. I looked right in his face.
Oh, my goodness.
And they can't change their course because they're too big.
Right, right.
And all I did is I just dived. I just took my stick and slipped, hit it like this and went down and down and down. And I said, then all of a sudden it dawned on me, I said, I better get out of this thing, and I thought about it. And I said, then I pulled out, and when I pulled out, the plane went flipping and flopping and everything as it came across the trees, and they were just missing them. Wow. And then when I got back to the base, though, they had reported that they saw me. They thought I was hit. They thought the plane hit me and made me go down. Oh. And they had reported that I was hit. And when I called in and I landed my airplane, I called, and then I get out of the airplane and I run to the guys, and the guys, they grabbed me and took me off the ground. They were so glad to see me. They thought I was a gunner.
Oh, so they thought you had gotten hit.
They thought I had gotten hit.
Oh, wow.
Well, that was an incident.
Why was that bomber plane so close to you?
Well, they fly a certain route. I don't know why. Maybe I was in their area. I don't know. They weren't supposed to be in our practice area. I just don't understand.
That's what I'm thinking. It didn't make sense to me. Just logically thinking about it.
I know. And I always wondered about it, but all I know, I lived.
I hear you.
But,
thank God.
And I don't know if I drifted off my area or they got out. They were in my area. I don't know which is which.
Right.
Yeah, but it didn't do it. So that's how I finished all that preliminary training. And I'll just go to another incident when. Then I started to. What happened after we do all the preliminary training? Then it decided to on of us, to take. Well, what we did, we had joined an existing group because by being part of the program, we just went in with the flying group. We were bombardiers, but we joined them. And with that group, like they said, they started at about 80 when they started out. No, 80 and 90, I think, when they started out. And we joined them. I guess that made another 110 or so.
Right.
Then 9 of us, 10, yeah. Anyway, so we trained with them. And when we got to near the end of our training, another good thing happened to me. Because they were selecting bomber pilots and fighter pilots because we did it a different way. And I remember I was talking at some place somewhere, and I mentioned that, and some white pilot, ex-pilot, jumped up and says, "That's not true what I said," because he said. I was saying that they were taking the biggest guy and making them bomber pilots and the smallest guy and they're making fighter pilots. He said, I only weighed 135 pounds and I flew B-17. But he was probably right. But anyway, they were selecting us and giving us a position. They were just saying, you do this. You become a bomber pilot because you're the big guy. You're a big guy.
Oh, okay.
And the little guys, there were only 10 of us, and 10 of us that finished out of the
class.
Yeah, and they said that the little guys, small guys, they said they made them fighter pilots. They just told him. But when it got to me, they said, Hayes, I said, you have your choice.
Really?
Yeah. He said, you take bombers or fighters.
Wow.
And I guess the reason, is because I was right on the borderline. I wasn't a big guy, you know. I was a tall, skinny runner.
Okay.
I weighed 160 pounds, and the big guy weighed 2-something, and the little guy weighed 140, 150.
Oh,
but I was in between, you know.
So sounds like they did purposely put the big guys and the little guys separate like that.
They did. They picked them according to your size, you know. And
was that a reason, you think?
Well, yeah. Well, a bomber is a little bit more difficult to fly than a fighter plane. You know what I mean?
Okay, and so you need to have. They think they need to have more power.
Yeah,
more
you're
strength?
stronger and strength and all that, and your legs and everything, because you got to hold the rudders when something go wrong, and you got to be strong in your.
Okay.
Yeah, and.
So that's when you choose to be the bomber.
Well, I like the big guys because I was around them a lot, and I said these big guys are pretty neat guys. I said I'd rather be a bomber pilot. So that's how I got in to be a bomber pilot. And then I learned to fly B-25s, you know, the bombers. And how much time?
You got plenty of time. You got 15 minutes. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, this particular time, you know, and I lucked again. I'm always lucky, you know. I was pretty lucky anyway. My instructor teaching me to fly B-25 was a black guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I just in time for blacks when the blacks came, because I was late anyway, you know.
Right.
And when the blacks came in, they were, and what happened, he was, you know, they had one, what they call a USO is where all the officers go. And not a USO, what they call it, officers club, where the officers go to entertain themselves, you know, drink and all that. Right. And you had to be an officer to go in there, because I could go because I was a bombardier, but I didn't go in the club. You know, I hardly ever went because I didn't have time to drink. I was so busy flying. But anyway,
you enjoyed flying.
Yeah,
you rather fly to drink, right?
I rather.
I hear you.
Anyway, this guy that he was so, for some reason or other, he was so proud of me. He was in there with, and most of those guys were white guys. You know, all the instructors were white. You know, he was one of the very few blacks. I guess maybe there was another one or so, but he was my instructor was black. But he's going around telling everybody, you know, he says I got one of the hottest pilots that ever came along. And you know, so he, and in the meantime, what happened is that he had some sickness in his family. He lived in Philadelphia. I remember he had to go to Philadelphia or something. So he went and left. And then when he left, all of a sudden, the whites were always in charge. They decided that they're going to give me what they call a check ride. I don't know if the check ride was to eliminate me or to find out if I was good or whatever. But they didn't particularly like, what the two reasons? They didn't like the idea that I was that good. They didn't like the idea for this black guy. He was an instructor. He was the one that taught me.
Right.
You see what I mean?
So after he left.
Everything, he wasn't there. So they figured we'll take care of him.
Wow.
So what they did is they sent me up one day with a captain, a white captain. He was an older guy. I don't know. I guess he'd been around a while. But he takes off, and you know, he sits in the left seat. The regular pilot sits in the left seat, and if you're the pilot, you take off and you land. And he took me up and flew me about an hour or so up in the air, and I went through all kinds of maneuvers and things, and he's telling me what do this and do that and all that. And then when he said we were finished and we were going in now, and then he said he called in and said to the control tower, he said, "This is Tuskegee so and so." One landing instructions, and they said, well, it says, since you've been up, it says the weather has gotten very bad. You know what I mean? We have a 30-some-mile-an-hour crosswind. So he said, well, let's see if I can get this thing down. So you know, I don't have to land it because he's an instructor. So I just sat there with my legs crossed like this, and he comes in and he tries to land it, and every time he tried to land it, the wind, we just sweep him right off the runway, you know. So he pulls up again and he called in and he said, I'd like to have another try at it. He says, this is pretty rough down here. So he said, go ahead, but watch that 30-some-mile-an-hour crosswind. So he pulls up and tries it again, and it swept him right off the runway. So I hit him on the shoulder. I said, hey, Captain. I said, why don't you let me try it? So in his funny way, he said, all right, if you think you can do any better, you just go right ahead.